But let's go ahead and go to the 2020 Detroit's election investigation part 1. Now, this has to do with ghost voters in this particular part 1 of the investigation. Now, I decided to use AI to read the article so we can get through it faster because, me and Romeo read
kind of retarded.
Me and William read really slow. So it's not only that, I could pause it, we could talk about it, stuff like that. But let's go ahead and listen to it. Now, the first part of it, they're actually giving you a recap of what happened during 2020 when it comes to the blue wall. That's Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania.
Not the blue waffle.
Detroit election investigation, part 1. Over 10K Detroit voters made same bizarre ghost vote marks on ballots in 2020 election, were mismarked ballots sending a message to voting machines or meant to trigger adjudication. After years of being gaslight by some of the most dishonest people in government and the media, the Gateway Pundit, along with some of the most respected election investigators in the state, are looking forward to blowing the lid off the lies about Detroit's secure 2020 election that helped to give Joe Biden with an inexplicable victory in the must-win state of Michigan. On election night 2020, President Donald J. Trump appeared to hold commanding leads in key battleground states, approximately 100,000 votes in Wisconsin, 300,000 in Michigan, and 700,000 in Pennsylvania. For Joe Biden to erase those margins, his performance in the outstanding vote would have needed to be dramatically stronger, particularly in heavily Democratic strongholds such as Detroit, Milwaukee, and Philadelphia. As the night wore on, reports emerged, often inconsistent, that some precincts had stopped counting, sent workers home, or restarted tabulations under unclear circumstances. To this day, there is confusion and disagreement over the extent of these pauses and whether any state laws or procedures were ignored in the process. What cannot be disputed is that vote totals from Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania continued to change throughout the night, long after many Americans had gone to bed. By the early morning hours of November 4th, Wisconsin had flipped blue. Next to flip was the must-win state of Michigan. Days later, Georgia and Pennsylvania flipped for Biden as well. For many observers, the stunning vote turnarounds, combined with conflicting reports of election night disruptions, fueled deep skepticism about the process's integrity and transparency. Judges in Michigan dismissed cases without allowing testimony from eyewitnesses or election integrity experts or even reviewing a shred of credible evidence. The media mocked anyone who tried to prove election fraud or malfeasance. Cowardly Republican members of the Michigan Senate, like Ed McBroom and Lana Tice, joined Democrats who added their seal of approval to a so-called report stating that there was no evidence of mass fraud in Michigan's 2020 election.
And the reason them two actually did that is because they were trying to further their career with the Republican Party, and they thought doing this would actually help them in the long run to get them into a Senate seat or into a House seat when it comes to federal government. And it didn't happen.
In Detroit, affidavits signed by dozens of poll challengers claiming they witnessed fraud were ignored by lawmakers and law enforcement, including the state's top law enforcement officer, Democrat Attorney General Dana Nessel, who mocked and threatened anyone, including members of the media, who dared to challenge the election results.
I think me and Williams had a conversation about affidavits and how we had some content creators talking about how important these were to actually proving the 2020 election was stolen. And then you had these people in like Michigan, Wisconsin, all over the country that had it stolen in those states, pretty much ignored them. Didn't use them to actually show the evidence or hear testimony from the witnesses of what happened. Not only that, they didn't even have court cases in a lot of these places either. They just got thrown out because the judges didn't want to have anything to do with it.
Yeah, that's a problem, in my opinion. Do you recall when this all was going on, there was supposed overhearing of screaming and hollering, and in one of the judge's chambers where they were, kind of pressing this judge to look at this, and he was screaming, saying, "I'm not going to look. I am not getting such and such and such and such." And
It's because a lot of these judges don't want to get involved in the political part of it. That's the reason the Supreme Court, in my opinion, didn't get involved, because they looked at it and they remember what happened in 2000 when they had to get involved in that election with the hanging Chad crap. And they're like
Yeah.
this, you know what? We'll pass.
Well, the problem you run into is yeah, I understand that, but when you have legal signed affidavits that that do have, if you find me where I'm openly telling a lie, I'm trying to do something, then I can face jail time. That ought to say something. That ought the judge to say, well, look, this isn't being political. Let's let's see what election laws are, and let's first of all, by the way, let's look at your election laws. Okay, your election laws state this, this, this. And then they'll say, no, we changed them. And they would say, well, you changed your election laws. I mean, it would have been easy to say, so you went through all the normal processes to change your election laws. And it went, no, we just did it real quick because we had to do it. But then
Yeah, we
immediately
did.
by law, then
What-
they would have threw all all of those election rules would have been out the window, and then everything would be illegal.
Well, we need to explain what you're talking about, because some people might not know. What William's talking about is some of these states, they decided to actually use the Secretary of State to change election laws instead of going through the Congress of that state. Like, just like the federal government, when you make a federal law or a state law, you have to go through the legislature. They did not go through that process to make these election laws. Instead, they allowed the Secretary of State to make them up as they went. And the reason they allowed them to do that is because of COVID. That's what initiated the whole thing. Now, what's interesting is some of these laws they actually started changing back in 2019, 2018, before COVID even hit.
Yeah, it's like they knew something was going to happen, but maybe that was a coincidence. But regardless of whatever circumstances they had for an argument of changing election laws outside of the actual law book, that doesn't make it legal. Regardless, you would have to say, okay, any judge that would allow you to break the law because of some sort of pandemic, even though, yes, let's just call the pandemic legitimate for the argument's sake. Nothing. I'm not saying it was, but let's just say for argument, say that it was a real pandemic that was totally organic. It still doesn't give you the right to break the law and change election, laws in your state because of such. You have to bite the bullet, and you have to work with things the best that you have, and then change things
Hey,
along the way.
look, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just giving you their thought process on what they did.
I know.
And
I'm listening.
And then if let's say if it did go to court and a judge was willing to listen, that doesn't mean they're actually going to agree with you in your viewpoint.
Right, but I mean, but the thing is law is law. If you apply law, there's no.
I understand, but here's the thing: a law is subjective by the person who's actually determining what the law means.
Well, that's why, and you're exactly right. And the only thing I'm going to add to that real quick is that's there are a lot of young people who want AI to do this because then it takes away that aspect of human input, which could be a good or a bad thing. But it's if you have people that are of moral content and character, it wouldn't be a problem. But these colleges, media, a lot of things, not just colleges, but a lot of things have been at the forefront of changing how humans operate. And that's where you run into that, because you're right, Matt. Some judge could say, well, you know what? This is how I feel today. Just like the judge that was in Minnesota that tossed out that $7 million loss, guilty verdict against those Somali people. She just with a strike of a pen, that was this is how I feel today. And that's the problem. But we could have a lot of ifs, ands, or buts about the whole thing, but this is how it happened. This is how it went down.
Well, that's why elections are important when it comes to judges too. Some of these judges are elected in, and some of them are actually put in by the governor or the president. That's the reason, especially executive positions like governor, mayor, and president is so important. It's because they need to actually be able to vet these people. And unfortunately, when it comes to the Democrat Party, they don't care about vetting. What they care about, are you the same ideology as me? And will you follow my lead whenever I decide to do something?
Yeah, and the bad thing we also are up against too at this point are a lot of people have taken multiple Fauci sauces and have destroyed the frontal lobe of their brain.
Well, let's go ahead and check out some more of this article.
The City of Detroit election results were certified under duress by 2 Republicans on the Wayne County Board of Canvassers, who received multiple threats over their initial refusal to certify the results. Wayne County Board of Canvassers Chair Monica Palmer received a photo of a dead teenage girl, along with a death threat against her adolescent daughter, over her initial refusal to certify the election results. Monica Palmer agreed to certify the results only if she was assured that a full forensic audit would be conducted. Her terms were agreed to by the other Democrat Canvass board members. After she and her fellow Republican Board of Canvassers member agreed to certify the election, Michigan's Dirty Democrat Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson informed them that no such audit would be performed. An astounding 70% of Detroit's absentee counting boards were out of balance in the 2020 election, according to Michigan's strict rules on recount eligibility.
So pretty much, Jocelyn Benson actually promised to do a full forensic audit of the 2020 election in Detroit for these 2 people, and they would, as long as they did that, they would sign off on the election. They sign off the election, and then she's like, "This, I'm not doing that now. You have fun." And that's the problem with trusting these people. You can't. They will take advantage of your naivete and then do whatever they want after you sign off on things. That's the reason at that point, people that are Republicans, whenever you think an election like that is going on, that something strange happened, you're not willing to sign and certify it. You need to stick to your guns and say, "Screw you, put me in jail."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There was one guy that did that, and they removed him and put or something like that. I forget what state that was at, but he put up a big fight.
That was in Arizona. It was Mesa, Arizona. They didn't put him in jail. They threatened to charge him, and they're about to charge him. And he went ahead and said, "All right, I'll go ahead and sign off on it, but I'm signing off on it in distress."
That's right. Yeah. Well, he should have never signed off on it.
Well, not everybody's willing to go to jail for their principles, you know.
Well, those lefties out there are, but and that's the thing about it. They love it. That's the difference. We've got to start really, yeah.
MCL 168.871 and related sections in Chapter 33, precincts certified as out of balance, without explanation, are ineligible for recount, meaning ballots couldn't be retabulated in a formal recount process. Election workers, who were repeatedly accused by poll challengers of working with Democrats to steal and cover up the steal at the TCF Center where absentee ballots were processed in 2020, whisked away all ballots and tabulator tapes where, along with absentee ballot applications and envelopes, were stored until which time, according to state and federal law, 22 months, they could be destroyed. Independent investigator Yehuda Miller of New Jersey put a large kink in any plans Detroit election officials had to destroy election documents from the 2020 election when he successfully sued the city of Detroit and Wayne County after they denied his FOIA request for all election-related documents. In September, Miller drove from New Jersey to Detroit in a U-Haul, loaded almost 1 million election documents from the 2020 election, and transported them to a secure location. In addition to the physical documents, Miller also obtained digital files from the highly controversial election that Michigan's top election integrity experts and a few friends from out of state have been poring over for the past 3.5 months. We are now prepared to offer our first in a series of findings. Our first report from our investigation into Detroit's 2020 general election.
So the reason they were able to do this report is because a man from New Jersey actually got an opportunity to grab these documents and these ballots and to do an investigation about what happened in 2020 in Michigan. That's great.
Yeah.
Has uncovered a startling discovery. Over 10,000 ghost voter ballots exhibiting a peculiar marking anomaly where voters filled in ovals for write-in candidates, but left the accompanying namespaces entirely blank. effectively creating invalid votes that required manual review, yet contributed to no specific candidate. This revelation comes amid the already chaotic backdrop of the former TCF Center, now Huntington Place, where Detroit centralized its absentee ballot processing during the unprecedented COVID-fueled surge in mail-in voting. One of the most underreported facts about the 2020 election in Detroit was its stunningly high adjudication rate, roughly 33%, or about 40,000 ballots.
Now, William, you want to explain what adjudication is?
Yeah, so what happens when the process of adjudication is, say for instance, a ballot comes in either damaged or it's just hard for it to be able, like if the bubble's not quite done right, the machine doesn't want to read it, then what a certified poll worker is to do is to take that ballot and then look at it with their own eyes, and then discern what this ballot actually is saying, and then print out a new ballot and then fill that ballot out so that it can be scanned, and then destroy the old ballot so that it's not it's not just floating around out there. Now, the only problem that you run into with adjudicators is how honest are they? And if now the thing is you'll be saying, well, that's not a problem because they're going to be monitored and poll watched by other people. But
that's not exactly what adjudication is. When it comes to a damaged ballot, you're right on that part. When it comes to a ballot, they don't know who they're voting for. At that point, they adjudicate it. What that means is they get three people, one from the Republican side, one from the Democrat side, and independent. And they'll look at the ballot and make a determination on who they are trying to actually vote for.
Yeah, if it's not bubbled in right or something.
Well, sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's a check mark off the side. Or maybe they actually voted for both. And at that point, they have to actually determine that. Now, as you saw in this article, they said roughly 33%, or about 4,000 ballots, winded up adjudicated, which is unusual and unheard of, really.
Well, okay, I'll be devil's advocate. You ready? The reason why is because they had so many more mail-in ballots. That's what they say, anyways.
Well, actually, that ain't reason, because if you look at places like Utah, their adjudication is just like everywhere else around the country, right around in between 1% to 6%, depending.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's very low.
Now, when it comes to here, it is 33% in 2020. Now, if you look at it in 2024, it's around 1% to 3%, or 1% to 4%, or 5%, 6%, whatever, like it normally is. And the reason it's different now is because of these ballots they found, 10,000 of them. They are ghost ballots that don't make any sense on what happened. Now, I'm going to show you a video of these ballots, but first, let's go in and listen to more of the video, because we get more information here.
Ballot adjudication occurred when ballots were flagged for human intervention due to issues such as overvotes, undervotes, stray marks, and write-ins. Yet, even in this high volume, a typical election with over 200,000 total ballots processed citywide, such as specific...
Now, remember, those 40,000 ballots that were adjudicated, that's just in Detroit alone.
Yeah.
Error pattern at a 6% rate remains highly improbable, if not impossible, and remains undocumented in official audits or reports from the Michigan Bureau of Elections. It's important to note that these ghost votes occurred on both absentee and election day ballots. This comparison...
So it's not only absentee ballots or mail-in ballots, it's also voting that day.
Real quickly, now, if I'm not mistaken, you said three, you got independent, Democrat.
Yes, that's how it's supposed to be done.
In certain states, they ran off a lot of those people and made it work.
That's the problem in Michigan. That's exactly what they did. That's the reason people have a problem with the adjudication numbers, because a lot of these people got thrown out. They were Republican, and the reason they got thrown out is because of COVID. They were too close to each other. But the thing is, they kept everybody that was a Democrat inside. Yeah.
Yeah. Some people pulled out votes under the table, ran it through the machine repeatedly.
That was mostly in
Georgia. Yeah.
Was prepared by Philip Davis, a member of our 2020 Detroit election results review team. The numbers shown below total over 11,000 write-in votes. Only a small number of these ballots included a name next to the filled-in oval for write-in candidates. These anomalies results occur...
All right, I want to go ahead and show you the video with the ballots here. Let me go ahead and bring it up.
Judas Priest.
Now, if you look at it right here, the
Yeah.
reason it's marked is because it's bubbled, no name there. Same with these. These are bubbled up, no names. No name, no name, no name. Okay, so we'll go ahead and watch that.
It looks like a machine did that.
Actually, no. I have another theory of what happened here. As you can see, those are not neat bubbles. They're actually quite. That one's pretty neat, but a lot of them are oval shape. This one, look at that one, all messed up looking.
Yeah.
Same with that one. That last one, that roll. None of them are the same. Yeah.
Why would they even put bubbles over there if there's no names? That's kind of weird too.
The write-ins. You can write in the particular candidate you want.
Somebody they wrote in. So who was it that one time? It was a bunch of write-ins. It was one election, and I can't remember. It was a funny name though. They did that was like it was. Well, I can't remember now. But I just recall some kind of weird write-in candidate that they put in there. I was like, what the hell?
Well, some people did Mickey Mouse and stuff like that. Now, here's the thing with them doing that. As soon as they do that, whenever they like make it where it has to be adjudicated, these adjudicators adjudicate all the races on that ballot. No matter if it's actually filled out right or not when it comes to other races. And this is a theory that people are using in Michigan that this is how they actually help steal the election in the middle of the night by getting ballots that had these places where they had no writing candidates. It was bubbled up and went through the machine. The machine's like, nope, spit it out and said, okay, you got to adjudicate it. They look at it and then they have to determine who actually do they think won. And then they go from there. And a lot of these times, these ballots that are adjudicated are going to Joe Biden. Majority of them.
Yeah, every one of them. It's like, wait a damn minute here. Yeah, it's like somebody like they had a bunch of ballots dropped that were done that way on purpose so they could be adjudicated.
Yes, that's the point. That's the point I'm trying to make. The reason they're doing that is because they want to force adjudication on a lot of these ballots. Not only that, sometimes these machines are making mistakes, the tabulators, and they'll get something that should be already they should count, and they'll spit it out and say it needs to be adjudicated, and all the bubbles are filled in right.
Yeah, well, and that's almost like they had miscalibrated the machine on purpose.
Well, I think that's what some of these, if you look at some of those ballots, how they have all those circles filled in a row, I think that's exactly what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to miscalibrate that machine to make other ballots spit out to be adjudicated. That's my theory.
Yeah, that's a good theory. I mean, I've thought about that too. I have, yeah.
But I got more of this video. Let's go and
there was another thing. They had software that makes them do fractional votes too, where it can do some weird stuff and throw numbers around. That was a weird thing that these things wrote into the software.
You're talking about the tabulators, yeah.
Yeah.
These anomalies results occurred only in down ballot races, and almost all of them occurred where voters filled in the ovals on the upper portion of the ballot for a straight ticket Democrat or for a Democratic presidential candidate, Joe Biden, and or a Democratic U.S. Senate candidate, Gary Peters. This video, directed at Michigan Democrat Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, who called the 2020 election the most secure in Michigan history, is currently running to become the state's next Democrat governor candidate. It was provided by @Mad_liberals, shows just a small sampling of the 10K plus ballots with ghost votes. Here is one example of the front of a ballot.
Yeah.
Here is an example of the back page of the ballot. Write-in attempts were rare overall, typically under 1% in Michigan races that year, and blank name ovals with no name attached, minuscule subset usually tied to isolated voter mistakes, were never flagged as occurring at this scale. With no evidence of widespread ballot design flaws, procedural lapses, or voter confusion to explain why more than 10,000 individuals would independently commit the exact same incomplete action. This deviation from norms across the state demands further scrutiny by the DOJ to verify or uncover potential underlying causes, mass voter fraud, for this impossible occurrence to happen in Detroit's 2020 electoral process. In Michigan's 2020 election process, including at Detroit's TCF Center, if a ballot had a write-in issue, such as a filled oval with no name isolated to a down ballot race, e.g., local offices or judges, the up ballot votes, e.g., presidential, U.S. Senate, or congressional, would still be counted as marked. Dominion tabulators scanned the entire ballot optically and tallied ballots.
So it's pretty much saying, even though they didn't actually vote for one of the main candidates, they voted third party or a write-in party, but they didn't write in the party itself. It still counted to someone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm guessing mostly it went to Democrats. That'd be my guess.
We'll just use this vote right here. Yeah, hubris.
Marks for all races where no ambiguity existed. Only the problematic write-in race would be flagged for manual adjudication. The question is, was the entire ballot recreated and then rerun through the tabulators, including the up ballot votes, i.e., Joe Biden, Senator Gary Peter, Representative Rashida Tlaib, which potentially could mean their votes were counted more than once. If none of the safeguards that should have been in place at the TCF or at polling places across Detroit were honored during Detroit's 2020 election, it would theoretically create significant opportunities for irregularities or manipulation, such as duplicate counting, improper adjudication, or untracked ballot handling. But to date, none of these 10,000 plus ghost voters with no names next to the ovals have been reported. Although we have our own theories about why this mass number of ballots was, intentionally, mismarked, we are seeking help from the general public. We are providing access to all ghost vote ballots here and hope that election integrity sleuths can help us determine all possible motives. Please send all theories to patty.mcmurray at thegatewaypundit.com. 2020
So, what's y'all's theory on this one?
Well, we laid out some good theories with that. You and I both did, with whether they're facilitating the adjudication process, basically, for their favor.
Well, here's the thing: when it comes to they stole the election in Michigan by 150,000 votes. So this is a small part of it. That's the reason it's part one. There'll be part 2, 3, I'm sure. Now, because the Democrats, what they have really learned how to do is how to do on many different levels, whether it's mail-in voting, adjudication, in-person voting, ballot harvesting. They figured it all out on all sorts of different ways to actually affect an election so they can win.